Hello. Welcome to the Paddle and Portage podcast.
Our mission at Paddle and Portage is to bring the wilderness community together through news, information, and most importantly, stories.
And one way we do that is through conversations.
Here today is one of those conversations.
We're talking today with Pete Marshall and Dave Meyer. They are friends of the Boundary Waters, and they work for Friends of the Boundary Waters. Will you explain the difference, if there is such a difference?
Yes, one is an official organization that has been around for almost 50 years, working to protect and promote the Boundary Waters. It's a group of people who come together over a shared love for this special place. And, you know, a generic friend of the Boundary Waters is anyone who goes to the Boundary Waters and appreciates the place, loves the place, wants to go back to the place, share the place.
And you're Pete.
And I'm Pete.
All right. Do you guys have some trips planned for 25 paddling trips? What's on your calendars?
I've got a couple. I'm going back with an old friend who came to town 20 years ago, and we're going back up the Gunflint for a week in August. And then every year we go Labor Day, which is the best time to go, in my opinion. Bugs are dead, water's still warm, and going up for a quick family trip just right out of Ely on Snowbank Lake. And so I'm excited to check that out.
What's the entry point on the Gunflint this trip with your buddy that's coming back?
Oh my gosh. I'm forgetting right now.
Somewhere up in there.
It's it's not at the tip of my tongue right now.
Yeah, that's all right.
It's between 1 and 70.
Yeah. What's on your calendar, Pete?
May I've got an early trip going in through Nina Moose. Kind of been wanting to go up that area for a while. And then, similar to Dave, end of August, right before Labor Day, I will be going into the South Quishwee River on a family trip. So have my 8-year-old, my wife, with me on that trip. So really looking forward to that.
Any Quetico, Wabakimi, Woodland Caribou, those types of aspirations, intentions, plans, any of that? I
still want to hobble together a Quetico trip. I kind of shopped it around with a few paddling buddies, but for whatever reasons, people were busy or had some other excuse. But the nice thing about Quetico is they have that rolling permitting system, so there's not that mad scramble to get permits at the end of January. So I think there's still time, probably aiming for something around mid-July, and end of July to get up there.
Mm-hmm. What are you thinking, hearing, feeling about some of the tension between Canada, U.S., and where that spills into things like RABCs and paddling in Quetico, crossing the border, all this sort of turmoil that's tied up in Washington that dips into the paddling
community? It's touchy right now. It's really touchy with obviously U.S.-Canada relations, but it seemed like it even kind of started before that, and just the RABC, and it didn't seem like everybody had their ducks in a row and agencies weren't talking to each other. And so it seems to me just kind of it's a little fraught to try to count on anything about that. You seem to be at the forefront of all of it, Joe, though. You're calling everybody every week to get to the bottom of it.
I was with the RABC thing, and a lot of that was because people in Grand Marais, Gunflint community were really tied up in it.
Mm-hmm.
Either their businesses, they bought property up there. It was a very personal thing for them. And when you see that, they sit down and we're talking like we're talking, and you're seeing these people who've invested a lot of money and time and heart and passion, and they love SAG, and they're just like, am I going to be able to go to my place? It becomes a different thing than just like a story, and it was an immediate thing happening. So I got kind of tied up in it, I guess.
Yeah, and for trips too. I mean, it seems like that's more important than somebody's summer trip. We'll figure it out.
Right, and I think that's why I was so invested in that, is I was seeing these people who had built property or bought businesses, and then to maybe that next tier after that is like the fishing guides and the towboat operators and even talking with Quetico officials who had no idea. The first time I talked to Trevor, who was then the superintendent, he's now moved into a different position. I said, "What do you know about RABCs?" "I don't know anything. Is there an issue?" And it was just like, holy cow! The Canada Border Services Agency is completely separate from Quetico. There's no connection there.
Right.
It was a really complicated story. It got emotional too.
Yeah.
For the people.
Yeah, and just there is uncertainty or just I guess challenges with going to Quetico this year because the RABC is paused and it's so easy, convenient, and to go through the southern ranger stations and some of the stars of the show, so to speak, are right there. Silver Falls Chains, Knip, and so forth, and then I was wondering if you knew about this, but I know the last several years Beaver House hasn't had a ranger in the station. And I understand the same with Cache Bay.
They've had people there.
They've had people there.
Yeah,
I've heard some reports that people went in through Cache Bay and no one was there.
Yeah, it could have been either like the season had left. They get there late May, June, even sometimes. And in fact, that couple is coming back. I just talked to the superintendent this morning. There's a new superintendent. His name's Jason. And he was the assistant superintendent before. And I was calling because somebody had called me from Ely when we were driving over to Madison for Canoecopia and said, "I'm hearing that there's an issue with Quetico permits." Sort of left it at that. It's a very credible source. And so I called Quetico and sort of worked some of those angles. And it was like, Cache Bay is going to be staffed. Prairie Portage is going to be staffed. Beaver House, and maybe I don't know about, but definitely they'll be staffed at Cache Bay. And it's this young couple who's been there. This will be their third year now. They were the first full-time people after Janice Matichuk, Peter and Stacy, and they're confirmed at this point to be back. So yes, there will be people there. That's the plan as of now. But how much of this stuff is just day to day? Like, that's been the most interesting thing since late January, the change of the administration and so forth, is the day-to-day of all this, from Forest Service staff to permits, RBC things, this tariffs. A lot of this stuff is just, it could change. If we post this interview like on the 10th of March, it could be different by the 12th of March,
Right. Yeah, and part of it makes me think that with all this uncertainty in both U.S.-Canada relations, and then just with RABC issue and which entry points or ranger stations you can and cannot go through now. It also just want to shout a little reminder, like, might be the best year to go up to the Boundary Waters of Quetico, and it's still open, it's still there, there's still ways to do that. Might be a little bit confusing, but it's there, people, and especially in the malarkey we're living through right now, I think there's going to be a lot of people who want to, escape for 5 days a week, maybe more, and just kind of, reconnect with what's really important and matters up there.
And I'm down with that, Pete. One thing, though, about if there's a lot of visitors that go to the Boundary Waters this summer, is the reduction in Forest Service staff, the hiring freeze, the fact that there was already going to be a shortage of staff even before some of the, Elon type narrative started to become more publicly known, and reduction in workforce and all of that, is that things like latrines, portage trails, campsite maintenance, like if the wilderness itself sees another COVID bump and uptick in users, who's going to be out there taking care of it? That would be a variable that's like, I don't know how that's going to unfold this year. It's going to be interesting to see. Not to say don't go. Like Pete's saying, I echo the sentiment of go check it out and have a mental health break from the world and get out there. But you might have a latrine that's like full of shit, literally
full of shit.
You might have to go Quetico style in the Boundary Waters, right?
I've been asking what's the protocol on that. What are you going to do? Talking with like Tom and people in the Forest Service about that, and it's sort of hypothetical, and so there's no real reason to write an article about it yet. But I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, I know. If you're, just my strategy is to go get my permit through an outfitter, instead of hoping that, the Tofty station is open on the day that I want to go, because that's where they've started to reduce hours already in the past, at the end of last season. And then, one thing I'm doing here at Cornucopia, I'm doing a Leave No Trace presentation. And so for Boundary Waters noobs, and the idea is just to kind of, get people to learn how to kind of take care of it and what is the expectation. There might not be somebody there to answer your questions and give the speech. I mean, they'll have the video, but to have people who, to realize that, it's on us a little bit too to take care of this, and if you can, make an improvement, not like by chopping down a tree or something like that, but
view of the lake and all
make sure take care of it and take some stewardship of it and take some responsibility. If you're comfortable and know what you're doing, then I think that might be a little bit more on us right now.
I'm Jason with Ely Outfitting Company in downtown Ely, Minnesota. As the stories by Joe M. and the Paddle and Portage team inspire you to explore the Boundary Waters, let our trail-savvy crew make your trip planning simple. If you haven't tried our free online trip routing service, complete with awesome interactive maps, check out elyoutfittingcompany.com. And when you're ready, find complete outfitting services, lightweight canoe rentals, and comfy bunkhouse lodging at Ely Outfitting Company.
And this episode of the Paddle and Portage podcast comes from Loon's Nest Coffee. They're located on the Gunflint Trail in the Mid-Trail area. A lot of great things about Loon's Nest Coffee, one of them being that they open at 7 a.m., so they're open early. Get you started on your canoe trip. They've got food there, in addition to, of course, all the different espresso drinks, the coffee drinks. All the coffee from Loon's Nest comes from Carlson Roasting right here in Minnesota. That's the umbrella, sort of the mothership of Loon's Nest Coffee, Carlson Roasting. It's Bob Carlson, the Carlson family that own and operate this. Absolutely a family business right on the Gunflint Trail. It's all organic and fair trade coffee. We go in there a lot, stop in, talk with Bob and the crew there at Loon's Nest. Really appreciate swinging in there to start the trip, or they're open in the afternoons too, so we'll pop in after we've been paddling and fishing up the Gunflint. Always just enjoy talking with the team there at Loon's Nest Coffee and appreciate their support. They're looking forward to serving you this summer 2025. Find them on the Gunflint Trail, Loon's Nest Coffee.
Is that something that the Friends entity, the organization, would get involved with, is promoting better use of the wilderness? I mean, because for people who aren't familiar with the Friends of the Boundary Waters, there's an advocacy, and it's partially at least tied up with like Twin Metals mine and advocacy, and don't have a non-ferrous copper nickel mine on the edge of the wilderness. That's part of the Friends. But would you also get involved in something that's more like, here's how you safely and have better use of the wilderness while you're out there? Is that something that you guys would do?
I mean, it's certainly something. We have resources on our website, and obviously Dave is talking about it this weekend. There's a lot going on, needless to say, with a very aggressive administration in the White House that's aggressively pursuing mineral leases and developments at the edge of the Boundary Waters. That certainly has us tied up. And we have other programs like land conservation, our No Boundaries to the Boundary Waters education program that sends kids from underserved communities into the Boundary Waters each year. Slated to send over 200 this year. But I do see what you're saying, that in the lack of Forest Service personnel just on the ground to maintain campsites, maintain latrines, there's an increased need for more conscientious. That's a tough word.
It is. Conscientious?
Yeah, good work. Nailed it. What Joe said, use of the wilderness.
Right.
But, I think it is probably something that will be discussed more, just that as time changes, a lot of our messaging and approach to some matters that were maybe less consequential before might change. Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk then and break some things down, federal and state-wise, as far as what the Friends are working on, where you're at on things? And I know you were at the Capitol in St. Paul recently, or Chris, and on behalf of the organization and so forth. But that we're talking federal now. Let's stay with that. The moratorium being lifted about mining in Superior National Forest, the aggressive push that you referenced, Pete, about extraction, and we need these minerals, and this narrative having really a platform now that it's never had before.
Yep.
And where you're at, do you think it's going to end up with courts during the next 4 years, or are we not there yet?
So just to give a little lay of the land, we saw real quickly in the past month that Trump is a staunch mining president, and it seems to be on his mind for a lot of things he's doing, from annexing Greenland to the executive orders to unleash America's energy, and the more recent executive order to promote copper mining development within the U.S. To the tit for tat he wants with Ukraine on getting their rare earth minerals. So minerals are very much on this president's mind and this administration's mind, and we've already seen pretty aggressive steps towards nullifying the 20-year mining moratorium that is currently in place on about 225,000 acres of land in the Superior National Forest. And it's hard to say exactly how that will shake out, whether that will be through agency decision, which is one way, like the Department of Interior, Department of Agriculture. They can take steps to both reinstate Twin Metals mineral leases and to overturn this mining ban. And then another way is that Representative Pete Stauber from northern Minnesota has introduced a bill that would open mining in the Superior National Forest. It would reinstate Twin Metals mineral leases, and it would reduce environmental review to just 18 months, which is kind of a comical amount of time to actually look at a plan for a mine that could be potentially devastating to the ecosystem. And based on all other copper sulfide mines that have opened and operated within this country, within the world, would be devastating for the ecosystem. So there's a pretty strong headwind coming from Washington, and a pretty strong push. And I think we'll see either a vote on this bill or actual executive action shortly.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it's on their agenda for sure. There's no doubt about that.
And it has a lot of support.
I wouldn't say it has a lot of support. It has support.
Mm-hmm.
It has support, right?
And it has a lot of opposition.
Has a lot of opposition. Mm-hmm. I think there's a narrative out there that continues on a very long, I would say kind of tired platform of American energy independence that has been being pushed since the 1970s, frankly, and an argument that this copper is needed to build the infrastructure America needs to lead the world in the 21st century. But the fact of the matter is these are foreign-owned mining companies. They get the metals. These metals get sold on the international market, right? They don't go to your mom and pop's local metal farmers market. They don't stay local. It's a global commodity. It's traded on a global level, and unfortunately, we are left with the consequences of what one of these mines would leave, which is most likely pollution, and they get the profits and leave.
And the rhetoric in Ely in particular would be these jobs or high-paying jobs, or a lot of jobs, or what happened if the mine would open, and that the communities would benefit from like royalty payments and money coming in from like that goes to IRRB. There would sort of be a surplus of money available to the state in these communities. Like that's a narrative locally that would be like, yeah, maybe we don't get to sell the metals or choose where they're sold, but our community is going to benefit from it.
Right, and certainly these mines would provide jobs, and I think that is a draw for a lot of people in the area, and it's an understandable desire to welcome an industry that would offer jobs. And obviously there's a pretty big tradition of mining in the area, iron mining, but it's iron mining much different than copper sulfide mining. But it's even by PolyMet, the other proposed copper sulfide mine, according to their own calculations in 2011, in their draft environmental statement, they said that approximately 25% of the jobs it would create would go to locals. So the thought that this would be local jobs is, by the company's own estimations, vastly overestimated. And I mean, we're just in a world now where things are automated. Mines do not provide that many jobs as they used to. Automation has changed virtually every industry we're in, and certainly has changed mining as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's a federal overview. Obviously, there's a lot of offshoots. We could go down a lot of off ramps and really dive into some things, but we'll keep it kind of high level for the podcast today. But let's talk about the state. I mentioned that the Friends were at the Capitol in St. Paul recently, and 3 different pieces of legislation I think were discussed. Approve It First, which we've talked about a number of times, and then like a bad actor bill, as well as there's like a taxpayer related, or the taxpayers wouldn't be on the hook for some of the cleanup, or the entities would be. Are those, is that accurate to say those 3 are kind of the driving points that were shared?
Well, there's a federal level of protection that we're asking people to contact their Congress people and kind of get involved on the federal level. But then there's also a state layer where there are several types of legislation. The Prove It First piece of legislation is where, since a copper sulfide mine has never been open safely at all, and the pollution from that, they've never not polluted. And so we're saying, like, hey, show us an example of where a copper sulfide mine has opened where it hasn't polluted, and then we could do it in Minnesota after it's been open for 10 years and then closed for 10 years without polluting. And so with the water-rich environment in northern Minnesota and the other jobs that are dependent in the area, the tourism type jobs and things like that, things that are and the Boundary Waters itself, which is part of our state identity. We want to make sure that what they're saying, if it's safe, then show us first. And so that's the main piece of legislation that we're promoting with the Friends of the Boundary Waters, and we've gotten at the state capitol and had a lot of people show up.
I saw that. A lot of people were in that room.
Yeah. Overflowed.
But and then does that make it all the more frustrating when people like Grant Hochschild or other people, the bill struggles to move forward, in other words? Does that frustrate you?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's the challenge is that, frankly, DFL leadership doesn't want this problem to exist. They want it to go away. DFL has long struggled. That's the Democratic Farmer Labor Party for folks listening to out of state.
Democrats.
Yeah, the Democrats. They have long had to balance the boundary waters issue, so to speak. They had to do it in the 60s, in the 70s. They have to do it today because the issue is northeastern Minnesota and the metro area are their strongholds traditionally, and while the metro and northeastern Minnesota see eye to eye on a lot of issues, when it comes to protecting the boundary waters and prohibiting the extraction of natural resources, there's a big divide where a lot, because northeastern Minnesota has had an economy that was built on iron mining and timber industry. They have largely been resistant to kind of state or federal overreach to protect this area. So the DFL has had to either strike a balance or try to avoid the issue, quite frankly. And right now, the leadership is trying to avoid the issue by not holding hearings on it, not even meeting with us, quite frankly. Neither House leaders nor the governor will meet with us. They're just trying to hope that this problem goes away. So it's incredibly frustrating.
Right. Especially since a majority of Minnesotans are in favor of protecting the boundary waters.
And what do you attribute that to? Money, lobbyists, the fact that it's hard for somebody like Grant Hochschild, who's a Democratic state senator representing this part of Minnesota, from Grand Marais to Ely and down and the range and so forth, that he's going to face a political pushback potentially if he takes a stance on it. Like, what do you attribute the fact that they won't even have a discussion and that the Democrats won't support this type of legislation?
I think it's just this is realpolitik, right? This is political calculations, where I think if, say, the Democrat DFL leadership came out and support this, they would lose support in northeastern Minnesota, whereas they cannot support it. And I mean, let's just be honest, a bunch of liberals in the metro area, Twin Cities, they're not going to be like, well, we're going for the Republicans now, right? Like it's kind of like it's kind of a calculation right there.
Yeah, and so that's why I ask about, do you think it's just going to be a legal battle as opposed to legislation that sort of is the decision maker or breaking point on this?
I think it's both, right? Like we are slowly gaining momentum in gaining support within the legislature. It's definitely an uphill battle, right? But one of our strongest supporters is Senator Jim McEwen from Duluth area. So it's probably going to be a long-term battle with having legal protection there. But it's something we still need to be active for, need to show up, need to bring the argument to people, even if leadership isn't going to do that. But probably in the most pressing time, it's going to be a legal defense. Yeah, most immediate time.
And so are you building a capital reserve set aside for legal funds, working with attorneys that'll maybe represent pro bono, that type of thing, and shifting a strategy toward either behind the scenes or even publicly toward a legal defense and preparation?
Yeah, so we do have a great legal representation with Robbins Kaplan, who has represented us and others in the legal fight against twin metals for the past, I think since I've been here, since almost a decade, I think. So they've been a huge help, and then we also have other law firms that work with us on other matters, but because it is such a big series of cases that we're foreseeing before us, definitely building up that reserve. And I would say that our supporters, people who love the Boundary Waters, have been incredibly generous since the election of Trump, because they know that the danger is immediate, right? That this administration has made it very clear on their intentions. So we've been able to build up that legal defense fund and get ready for whenever kind of nonsense comes down the line.
Enjoy this episode of Paddle and Portage, brought to you by Women's Wilderness Discovery in Ely, Minnesota, gateway to the Boundary Waters. Experience canoe country in all seasons with our outfitted guided trips and workshops. Visit us online at womenswildernessdiscovery.com, Instagram, and Facebook. Discover your inner strength outdoors.
And then when we take all of these things and hopefully people are able to grasp the urgency of what we're discussing, what's being shared by groups like the Friends and so forth, given the political climate right now in the United States, is that what does that mean for people who just want to go fishing, canoeing, go to the Boundary Waters? Are they supposed to let this sort of loom on them? And can we still just kind of go out there and be present with it? Is this something that is there's kind of a negative tone or fear or uncertainty in some of what we've been discussing, but like, what does that mean for the average paddler coming from Indiana or Chicago or something?
I think people should get involved. I think if you appreciate being able to go up to the Boundary Waters and go fishing, you probably don't want to do it in a polluted lake. And if you want to cool off after a day paddling, you don't want to do it in a polluted lake. And so I feel like that's how the Boundary Waters first came about, was the protections, that is, was friends getting together to protect this place and do it in a way that was more sustainable and more to wilderness values than was being done. And so I think that it's people, grassroots. People got to get together, and if this is important to you, you got to take care of it.
And these things happen at the local level and grow. I mean, we can go back to like the 20s and 1920s and 100 years ago, century ago, and look at like Ernest Oberholzer, and the dams and just the work that he did then with other people through legislation and political means to have an impact. And like nobody in Indiana probably at that time was like, who's Ernest Oberholzer? I don't know who the equivalent is today. Maybe it's you guys. Like in 100 years, they might be like, Pete and David they did the damn work, and that's a possibility. And now there's legacy there for like Sigurd Olson and Oberholzer. Have you guys ever been to Mallard Island? Check that place out?
I have not, and it's why I haven't is a mystery, because I'm a bookish guy. I have like 3,000 books in my man cave at home, and I love to canoe. I love the North, so Mallard Island should be, the perfect place on earth for me.
Did we talk about this?
I think we have a bit, yeah.
I hope you can get over there and check it out. There's like individual artist week, it's called in Mallard, and you don't have to like show up and paint a great picture or write a poem or masterpiece. You can just kind of go there, and there's a lot of reflection involved. It's an amazing place. People who are listening should definitely check out Mallard Island, the Oberholzer Foundation, and those types of nonprofits and advocacy can work through into protecting places like the Boundary Waters and Voyagers and so forth, this whole area of northern Minnesota, which is so massive. When I was doing RABC sort of reporting and talking with people over in like Sandpoint Lake and these areas like way over beyond Lac LaCroix and over toward Rainy Lake and this whole area, it's just like I'd never even heard of some of these lakes, let alone gone to them. And they're big lakes, and there's all these border waters. This is like an unbelievable place in the world. And sometimes I kind of lose perspective on that in my little Grand Marais bubble of local stuff.
Yeah, and on that point of Oberholzer, and to your previous question of you just want to come up here from Indiana and fish, like should you worry about this? Dave's right. People should be involved, and that doesn't mean that when you wake up in the morning, you see the mist, you hear the loon calls, throw your first lure out, you're just thinking about the doom and gloom of the world and potential environmental catastrophes. But it's to remember that this didn't just happen. There are innumerable times in the last 100 years where this could have become, a very well-paved resort area. And with Oberholzer, if it wasn't for Oberholzer and many other people, there would be 7 dams on the Rainy River, and we'd have reservoirs the size of Massachusetts that would flood most of the Boundary Waters right now. While it's important to just be, I guess you would say, in the wilderness, it's also incredibly important to realize that this didn't happen. This isn't quote unquote natural. It's the result of a lot of people working together to make it this way. And there are many ways in the future where things could go awry, where we won't have this.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And what are to wrap up, some anecdotes, some stories that you have about the Boundary Waters, some stuff you've experienced out there on a trip?
Well, Dave was in this windstorm in 1999, so he beats me.
The blowdown?
Yeah, the old blowdown.
Wow, not interesting. I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. I was up there. I just gotten, my wife and I just got married, and we went to Greece, but my dream was also to go to the Boundary Waters, so we went up there. We'd used all our vacation time to go to Greece, and so I went up to the Boundary Waters for the July 4th weekend to get the 3 days in. And that's,
Where were you at?
Off the Gunflint, Joe.
Someplace.
It was Swan Lake.
Oh, yeah. Or that's down by like Brule in that area, off like the Lima Grade down off like Morgan or Bower Trout area.
Bower Trout, that was it. Bower Trout in a few lakes, and it was the most beautiful trip. I think the animals knew something was coming because we saw like 6 moose on the way in. It was unbelievable. Yeah, a moose, a mom and her calf. They got separated and then found each other later, and then bull moose, just with water off the antlers. And later I was reflecting, like, all this activity, they knew something was coming, you know?
For sure. And that was like the day of the storm that you saw these animals?
Day before, maybe.
Yeah.
Day before the
storm.
So
they even had this sort of like, something's weird in the air.
Moose, antler radar antenna, yeah.
And what was your experience during the actual blowdown itself?
Oh, it was a bad wind. I was trying to hold up the tent. I'd been in a tent in Montana once before that had blown down around me, and I had to sleep in a blown down tent all night. And so I was determined to keep this thing up and not have the pole snap. So I was just kind of holding it up while the up around me. And so we were in there for about an hour, and then came out, and there were 2 root balls, pulled up right next to the tent, with trees right next to the tent and other trees in the site sheared off. And then the portage was the worst, because I hadn't camped enough with my wife to know how to pack for a smaller person that wasn't my dad. So I had to carry everything over all the trees that were down on the portage
the
trails.
crisscross of everything. Oh my goodness. And that's a miracle, basically, that nobody died in the storm itself with these types of situations that you were describing, and how many other people were out there on this holiday weekend that experienced that.
Yeah.
So it's almost unbelievable to think about that nobody died with trees and uprooting and all these situations.
Yeah, I mean, there were some dire situations there in Kerry Griffith's book. He details some of that, but definitely it was miraculous, because it was so powerful and so many trees. I mean, when you saw the helicopter footage of all the trees down, and then worrying about fires and things like that in the future. So
that's a story. You were in the blowdown.
Yeah.
My goodness. Pete, what's a story that comes to mind when you think about being out there?
For me, I think it's just kind of that everyday magic that happens on the trip. I've certainly had some scary encounters with moose that I didn't know were scary. I was just too ignorant at the time to know that if a big bull moose comes into your camp, it's not a moment to be like, whoa, cool, you should be worried. Luckily, the moose wasn't aggressive, but, looking back, you're like, oh.
Like just walking through?
Walking through, Mm-hmm. He was fine with us, though.
What time of year was that?
This was August, right? So it wasn't during the rut,
okay.
But like I've seen some in the rut, and, got my heart beating a bit like, oh boy.
Yeah, right.
Don't challenge me.
Yeah.
You win.
Any bear encounters?
I don't think I've had bear encounters I think I've probably camped 500 days in Minnesota through Canada, and I've had like a bear in the camp twice. I've been very lucky with bears. Other people, they've camped 20 days in their life, and it's like 4 bear encounters, something crazy.
What, do you hang your food, or do you use a Kevlar bag now that there's this food storage order?
Now that there's a food storage order, of course I hang my bag 12 feet up, 6 feet away from a branch.
Yeah.
No, I keep a clean camp, cleaner than my office. But I seal my food up in plastic or waterproof bags, and I usually don't hang it that way. But it's a little bit of luck and a little bit of keeping a clean camp. We'll do that. But it's just kind of that. Like one night, I remember I couldn't go to sleep because there was noise, and your head starts playing games with you. Like, it's definitely Bigfoot this time, but it was like a family of otters, and it was a full moon. So I just got out of my tent and watched them play 30 feet down from the shore. That's just incredible, right? And plus, otters are just phenomenal creatures, and this beautiful place with this these moon-soaked rocks. So there's all these everyday kind of affirmations that this is an incredible experience I'm having. As I get older and my trips unfortunately become a bit shorter, I savor that all the more.
All right. Friends of the Boundary Waters, Wilderness, and we've got links that we'll have with the episode to the organization. And I appreciate you making some time to have this conversation, and I just appreciate communicating with you both. We talk about things from news-related things to random trip encounters and stuff.
Yeah.
So I've appreciated getting to know both of you guys over the past 8-10 years, however long it's been now, and there's good correspondence that occurs between Paddle and Portage and friends. And
for sure.
It's a really healthy and good thing, I think, for both, certainly for our organization it is. So Pete Marshall and Dave Meyer, appreciate you both. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks
Joe.
Joe.
special thanks to Darren and the team from Rutabaga Paddle Sports in Madison, Wisconsin, as well as Canoecopia, where this interview that you just heard today on the podcast was recorded at the Expo in Madison in 2025, although we're already looking forward to next year's event, Canoecopia 2026.
In case you don't know, Canoecopia is probably the largest gathering in the nation when it comes to paddle sports, and therefore it's the largest concentration of storytellers in the nation. We will continue to bring you those stories throughout the year so that you can be as inspired by this great community as we are. Don't forget to like, subscribe, most importantly, go visit the website or the YouTube channel. We appreciate your support.